Hey guys, Galapagos Jay here. Today is another video for the beginner series, and today this is going to be about the anatomy of a gearbox, everything about the functions and how it relates with each other and stuff, different types of gearbox, and also when you upgrade it, okay, what sort of effect or outcome can come out of each part. So anyway, let's get started. All right, so here we have a gearbox already opened. All right, and let's go through all the parts first. That's the easiest part. First of all, if we look from the front, okay, here we have the air seal nozzle, cylinder head, cylinder, okay, going to the back. This is the piston, the spring, and the spring guide. Okay, so let's pull this out. This is the spring, okay, this is the spring guide, okay, and to pull out the piston, okay, we can see that the piston has a head. This is called the piston head. All right, this is the O-ring on the piston head, and that's the teeth of the piston. This is called the tappet plate. This whole thing with this little wing at the back, this whole thing is called the tappet plate, and attaches itself to the air seal nozzle, and it's also pulled by this tappet plate spring. This tappet plate is moved by this gear. Okay, if you see this bronze looking thing, this is called the delay chip. Okay, some people install it, some don't. Okay, there are different materials to this, different shapes. Okay, but the idea is to sort of like adjust the timing of the tappet plate and stuff. I'll go into a bit later. So let's look at this. This is called the sector gear. This is the bevel gear. The bevel gear looks like this. Okay, it's called a bevel gear because it's got this sort of like a slant to it. So we call it the bevel gear, okay? Below the bevel gear is this. This is called the anti-reverse latch, okay? Let's take that out. And the sector gear, spur gear, okay? So below the sector gear is the spur gear, all right? Let's take these out too. This is the trigger unit. If you pull on the trigger, it pushes this unit into this sort of clip here, and this clip basically is just a break in the circuit, and this is just closing the circuit. So when you're pulling the trigger, you're essentially just closing the circuit of this entire, all these wires and stuff. And this here is the safety lock, so it's actually controlled on the other side. Okay, so if you look on this side, this is the selector plate. Okay, this is attached to the selector that is on the receiver. This thing, okay, it's moved by this piece here. So when you switch this, okay, you can look at the circle. Okay, it's just basically sort of swiveling this circle piece that drives this part of the plate, pushing it forward and backwards. Okay, so as you can see, there are springs here. Okay, there's a spring here. Okay, this plate pushes this little bit, this little arm here, and that arm is attached to this piece. When you're trying to put the gel blaster into safety, you're basically pushing this up. Okay, when it pushes this up, you can't really pull the trigger because it's blocking it. Okay, so that's pretty much how that safety thing works. Let's put everything back together. Oh, by the way, these two wires go to the magazine feed terminal. Okay, this goes to the motor, and these go to the battery. All right, so let's look at how each part interact with each other. Let's go back all the way to the top, starting from the air seal nozzle. The reason why it's called an air seal nozzle is because it's supposed to sit inside this three-way T-piece, okay? And it's supposed to seal up this ring, the red ring in there, okay? What it does is, as it's getting pulled, okay, let's look at the translucent part. As it's getting pulled, okay, as you see here, it opens up this area, okay? This area goes directly to the magazine. The gel balls come up, okay? And then as this air seal nozzle closes, okay, it pushes the gel ball into place into the inner barrel, and then also seals up this area so that the air inside the cylinder, as it punches out to push the gel ball out, nothing is leaking. Okay, so if you're not having a proper seal, such as like this, okay, so if you look, watch the head, if you're having something like this, okay, the air that comes out from the cylinder, okay, can escape through the bottom. Okay, so Let me point it out here. So you have this opening here. So that means the air coming out from the cylinder can escape down the magazine well as well. So that's why this air seal nozzle is that important, because this is where all the key action is happening for all the air to come out to punch the gel ball out. Okay, so that's the air seal nozzle. So as I was moving it back and forth, I was doing it through the tappet plate. Now the tappet plate is the connector that connects the air seal nozzle with the gear. Okay, so you can ignore this bronze piece and just look at this little pin here. What it does, it's supposed to pull back, okay, the tappet plate. So let's spin it. Okay, as it spins, as you can see, it will push onto the wing. Okay, this wing here on the tappet plate. So let's continue spinning it. Okay, as it spins also, okay, the gear on the teeth on the sector gear, okay, will also pull on the piston at the same time. So let me just continue spinning it. Okay, so now that we're in this position, okay, as you can see, the piston is almost all the way out here. Okay, there's only a few teeth left of the sector gear, and at this time, okay, as it escapes this sort of copper piece, the tappet plate will be released back. So let's spin it a few more times. So here we are. Look at this. When you're up to here, okay, the piston is still being pulled by the sector gear, but then the tappet is already back into position, okay, almost at the bottom, sealing up the three-way, ready for the piston to return into place in the next little bit of revolution to punch the air out. Okay, so that's what the tappet plate and this pin, this wing does. Okay. Anyway, so let's go back to this area. Okay, this is the cylinder head. Cylinder head basically just seals up the cylinder, and also is a connecting sort of junction for the air seal nozzle. So it looks like this. Okay, it looks like this. This piece connects to the air seal nozzle. Okay, so it goes like this. Goes like this, and this is the sorbo pad, right, with two O-rings. The two O-rings are supposed to seal up the cylinder so that no air is leaking out of it as the cylinder and the piston are in operation. And the cylinder itself, okay, is basically the area where the air is being sucked and pushed and stuff like that. So the cylinder itself, depending on your barrel length, and also the volume of it, can really affect your trajectory. So the combination of the cylinder volume and the barrel length is very important. I have a video on that. And some cylinders have holes, some have like openings and stuff. It really depends. This is what we call a 100% volume cylinder, okay, because my barrel length is fairly long. It's about 35 centimeters, so I am using a 100% volume cylinder here. Now for the piston head, okay, this is where the action of the air is being punched happens. So as the cylinder is getting pulled back, okay, this O-ring, okay, will be pushed to the front. As the O-ring is pushed forward, okay, these holes are sort of released to sort of allow air to get sucked in from behind. And then as it punches back, the O-ring will sit back. As it sits back, okay, it will seal up this entire area and seal up this ring here, okay. When that happens, no air will be able to leak out from the back, which means all the air in front of this piston head will get punched out of the air seal nozzle into the three-way and punches the gel ball out of the inner tube. Okay, so that's what it does. So this is the piston. Okay, the piston is basically the connection between the sector gear and the piston head. Okay, it is on rails. It's guided by the rail on the gearbox as well. So it's basically the supporting structure to sort of do this back and forth motion. So for the piston itself, there are different kinds of material and designs. They all serve a different purpose. Okay, for gel blaster, nylon is usually okay because nylon is, although it's not as sturdy as aluminium and stuff, the amount of power that we're using for gel blaster isn't enough to break it anyway. So nylon is good enough because it's a lot lighter than aluminium and stuff like that. So it makes it easier for it to travel and stuff. Anyway, so this is the spring that goes into that powers the piston. Okay, that drives the air out as well. So this is the main sort of power, the determining factor for FPS of a gel blaster. There are different kinds of strength and thickness to these springs, okay? And I have another video specifically on how to increase FPS for your gel blaster. On the spring guide itself, as it suggests, it's a guide for the spring to sort of like stay within the line of travel with the piston itself. So this is quite important if you have a very high powered setup. It's better to use like a metallic spring guide because it can, you know, so withstand the power of the back and forth punching of the piston and stuff. Now going back down, okay, as I mentioned before, the sector gear serves two purposes. It pulls on the piston and also times the movement of the air seal nozzle through the tappet plate. Okay, the spur gear basically connects the movement of the bevel gear to the sector gear, and the bevel gear is the connection between the motor and the rest of the gear. So the bevel gear is the direct connection to the pinion gear on the motor itself. So a motor would typically sit like this, okay, inside. I mean, you know, it's supposed to punch all the way up here, okay? And as this spins, okay, it'll spin this bevel gear and driving the spur gear and driving the sector gear, right? Now, putting back the anti-reverse latch, okay, as the name suggests, the anti-reverse latch is to protect the gear set from traveling in the opposite direction, okay? So the anti-reverse latch is very, very important, okay? So let's take this thing apart first. The sector gear, if you look at it, it's only supposed to travel in this direction. So as you can hear, there's a clicking sound. That's basically the anti-reverse latch sort of rubbing against the bevel gear. But if you want to go this way, okay, you won't be able to do it because the anti-reverse latch actually is pushing against these grooves on the bevel gear, okay? There are grooves here. Okay, I don't know if you can see it. These grooves here, okay? So in one direction it's gonna travel fine, but if you push against the opposite direction, it'll sort of basically push against these grooves and stopping for the gear set from going in the reverse direction. So basically that's all the main components of the gearbox. There are other components that you might want to look into upgrading, and if you strip everything, okay, and you have an empty gearbox, you still have these components. We call it either bushing or bearings. Okay, these are very, very important. Okay, the ones that come straight out of the factory are usually just this metallic ring. Okay, but if you use the bearings, it improves on the you know, spinning of the gears because it's making it smoother. So you know, a lot of people, when they upgrade their gearboxes, this is probably one of the first things that they touch as well. Anyway, so let's go back to every component and let's see what you can upgrade and what it does when you upgrade it. First of all, when you get something straight out of the factory, there are a couple of things that are usually nylon. First of all, it's the gear set, the cylinder head, and also the air seal nozzle, okay? When you upgrade these to like aluminium or metallic, basically you're trying to increase the longevity of these components, okay? You can make it last longer and stuff. Especially with the cylinder head, because some cylinder heads, if you put a spring that is too powerful and it's nylon, it can actually crack. So aluminium can last a lot longer. But then again, if you're going for like really, really crazy sort of power, aluminium can crack too, but that's a very rare case. Another thing that you can upgrade from nylon is the cylinder head, okay, the piston head. Piston head can go from simple nylon head to aluminum or even steel. I haven't seen much of those steel ones because those are more like limited to really insane sort of setup, and steel is too heavy as well, so usually people just use aluminum heads. Okay, so other pieces that you can upgrade, as I mentioned before, is the bushing. You can upgrade to bearings. Now the cylinder itself, okay, when it comes straight out of the factory, it's metallic anyway, so what you'd want to upgrade it to is the difference in volume. So if you are, for example, increasing the length of the barrel, and then your blaster comes straight out of factory as like a 70% cylinder, then to match up with the longer barrel, you might want to push it to 80% or even 85%, something like that. Okay, so that's what you want to do for increasing or changing the cylinder. Okay, there's another video about that on matching up cylinder and the right barrel length. Now for the piston itself, okay, straight out of factory, most of the time you're getting nylon teeth, okay, and that usually goes with nylon gears as well. When you upgrade your gears to metallic gears, always make sure that your piston is also upgraded to metallic teeth, because if either of them are of different softer material, it will get shredded. So always make sure that you match up the same material from the piston and the gear itself. Upgrading it to metallic just basically increases the durability of the piston teeth. Now for the gear set, upgrading it to metallic without changing the gear ratio is basically increasing the durability of the gears. But there are different gear sets out there. The problem with metallic gears is that it has a higher momentum as it spins because it's heavier. So with metallic gears, it's very important that you have a much stronger motor to be able to pull it, especially in the case where you have much stronger spring and stuff like that. All these combination added up together can be, you know, quite stressful on your gearbox. So a stronger motor is definitely more important when you're thinking of upgrading everything to like metallic and stuff. So straight out of factory, the motor is probably going to be pretty bad and the torque is very low and stuff like that. So that's another component that you want to upgrade when you're considering upgrading the rest of these. Okay, so moving beyond what you can see here, okay, there are other things that you can upgrade for the gearbox. So if you don't want to use electronics for your gearbox, okay, straight out of factory, the trigger unit usually has like really bad wires. I have upgraded mine to like silver, like Teflon silver wires. These improve conductivity, and the Teflon covering also increases the durability of the wiring. So if the more you play with the wires, you know, and stuff like that, you won't be, you know, scratching it and, you know, breaking the wire and then, you know, sort of like exposing the insides of it. So Teflon silver wiring is very good upgrade for your blaster in general to improve the conductivity and the durability of it. Okay, so the trigger itself, when it comes straight out of factory, is usually nylon. You can change it to a metallic because the longer you play with the nylon trigger itself, it can snap. So a metallic trigger can last for a long time. And basically for all the upgrades of the gearbox, it's pretty much working on the same principle. Okay, you upgrade things to metallic, then you know, putting more stress, and then you need to consider, you know, better motor and better bushings and stuff like that. I will be releasing a video out in the future regarding how and what to upgrade and stuff. But you know, in general, you don't need to go for all of this in the beginning. So you do it one step at a time. That's the best way to go, because you get to learn how each thing work with each other as well. I have another video on FPS, increasing FPS. You can follow the instruction in that one. Well, not instruction, but the basic principle of it. And basically that's how you learn to upgrade your gearboxes and stuff, and sort of figure out what kind of parts you need to change. Okay, so anyway, so having said all that, okay, let's look at how many different kinds of gearboxes are out there. First of all, this gearbox I was demonstrating, as I said, this is a split gearbox, okay? It's still a V2 gearbox, but it's a split gearbox. Okay, so that means you can, you know, split into two halves. A typical V2 gearbox, okay, is like this. Okay, it's one piece, but the general shape looks like this. Okay, the trigger unit is housed here. Okay, the 3 gears, cylinder, stuff like that. There are many different versions, different brands to this, but they're generally in this shape. Okay, this is a fairly old War Interest V2 gearbox, as you can see, War Interest. Okay, and it doesn't allow you to change the spring after the fact, so you have to close everything. You have to put in everything and close the gearbox. So this is kind of an annoying old gearbox. The reason why I use the split gearbox is because for maintenance purposes I can do it in 2 pieces, you know, and this one I can install spring after the fact as well, so that makes it very, very convenient. But it still doesn't change the fact that this is a V2 gearbox. Okay, so this is the V2 gearbox. Let's move this aside. So what's another gearbox that's available in the market? This is a gearbox from AUG. Okay, this is a slimmer looking gearbox with an attached motor to the entire sort of setup. Okay, this is sort of like what we call V3 gearbox, but a proper V3 gearbox has a trigger unit here, so this is sort of like a modified version of the V3 gearbox. But a V3 gearbox tend to look very slim, and also a lot of times has a motor casing attached to it, so this is like one complete unit. This one is from the AUG. The AUG uses a different kind of trigger mechanism, so it doesn't have that sort of trigger unit in this area. So this is not the sort of like the authentic V3 gearbox. This is a modified version of it. Now, another possible gearbox you might encounter is the vector gearbox. Now, this one looks really strange, but the general principle is pretty much the same. Okay, it's still a motor driving gear set, and those gears are actually the same gears that you can use for your V2 gearbox as well. So if you want to have upgrade or you have spare parts and stuff, it's interchangeable. Anyhow, the mechanism is exactly the same. Motor driving the gears pulling on a cylinder, pulling on a piston, and the piston is punching the air out of this cylinder and then into this 3-way piece here and out the barrel in this end. So it's pretty much the same, it's just laid out differently. Obviously, there are different sort of mechanism when it comes to this angled thing. So this is the tappet plate, but the tappet plate's actually split into 2 pieces. One on this side, okay, connected to the air nozzle here, and then one on this side. So there's actually supposed to be a connector plate here that, you know, connects the movement of those 2 pieces. But this is basically the entirety of the tappet plate. Okay, so the you know, cylinder head is here as well. It's at an angle. Okay, this orange piece. Okay, so yeah, but anyway, so that's all the different kinds of gearboxes I have on hand. Okay, with the V2 gearbox, this is the most popular gearbox out there. Okay, in terms of layout anyway. There are Kublai, SEMA, War Interest, and FB and stuff like that. There are many different brands that come out with their own version of the V2 gearbox. It's essentially the same thing anyway. FB gearbox is all like split. Kublai has a pretty strong one, sturdy one. War Interest came out with a renewed version. This is like a 2.0. Their 3.0 version has like a after the fact sort of spring installation, so which is a lot better. It's a lot sturdier. So, but anyway, it's pretty much a V2 gearbox, and this is the V3. Okay, it's slimmer and stuff like that, so you can tell it's very obviously different just by the shape of it. Anyway, that was a brief look into the anatomy of a gearbox. Basically, it's just trying to show you guys the principle of how a gearbox works, regardless of whether it's a V2 or a V3 or even a vector gearbox or any other gearboxes that are out there, like the P90 straight gearbox. They all work on the same principle. All the parts are mostly interchangeable. Anyway, so I'm going to release more videos in the future on how to upgrade different parts and stuff like that and what to consider. And I hope you guys learned something from this. And if you have more questions, just leave it down in the comments or email me. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video, guys. Peace.